Oops, let's turn the mic on. I have 4:30, so we'll begin the meeting. It looks like everyone's here. I'll call the meeting to order and we'll begin with the flag salute. Okay, great. Welcome, everyone, to our December 12th board meeting. First item on the agenda is the approval of the regular meeting minutes from November 14th and 26th. And I'll move that we approve those meeting minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
Great. Are there any comments or questions? Excellent. So the meeting minutes are approved for the, oh, sorry, we need to have a vote. All those in favor of approving the meeting minutes signify with an aye. Aye. All opposed? And abstentions. And number 3, I think we can go directly to it, is the election of officers, which is a yearly event that we have here on the board. And for this, I'll turn it over to Superintendent McKay.
Thank you, Mr. Peters. We're going to follow along with School Board Policy and Procedure 1210 here. And this, as Mr. Peters referred to, as the annual organizational meeting. This is the meeting where at times on certain years through the election process where newly elected board members join the board. And at the same time of those meetings, it is also the time where the board elects its officers, which includes president, vice president. And this year, because it is an even ending year, the board will also elect a legislative representative to WASDA, their state organization. So I will lead as the secretary. I will lead them through the process of electing, first nominating their officers and electing their officers. And so we will start with the position of the school board president. I call for nominations for the board president to serve for the, in this case, which would be the 2025 year.
I'll nominate Dan Peters.
Do we have a second on that nomination? Is there any other nominations for president? We have a nomination for Mr. Peters and a second on that nomination. At this time, no other members have been nominated. We will go through a roll call vote, meaning I will call you individually for your vote, either yay or nay. We'll start at the far end. Board Member Iverson.
Yay.
Board Member Morford.
Yay.
Board Member Peters.
Yay?
Board Member Michael.
Yay.
4-0, Mr. Peters is elected by the board president. We'll move on to the position of vice president. Nominations are now open for the vice president.
I'd like to nominate Jamie Morford for vice president.
I'll second that.
Any other nominations for vice president? We have the nomination and a second for vice president position for board member Morford. Again, we will go through the roll call vote, starting with board member Iverson, yay or nay.
Yay.
Board member Morford, board member Peters,
Yay?
and board member Michael.
Yay.
4-0 is the vote. Mr. Morford will be the vice president for the ensuing year. Again, as I said before, on even numbered years, the board is to elect a legislative representative. The legislative representative works with the state association WASDA on developing and communicating legislative initiatives through the state organization. This will also serve a 2-year term. This is not a 1-year term. It is a 2-year term because it is only done every other year when the years are even. So with that being said, I'll open it up for nominations for WASDA legislative representative.
I'll nominate Derek Iverson.
And I'll second that.
Any other nominations? We have a nomination and a second for legislative representative, WASDA legislative representative, Board Member Iverson. Again, roll call vote. Mr. Iverson,
Yay.
Mr. Morford,
Yay.
Board Member Peters,
Yay.
and Board Member Michael. We have a 4-0 vote, and Mr. Iverson, Board Member Iverson, is elected to the WASDA legislative representative. That concludes the annual organizational meeting and the elections of the board officers. Jennifer, anything on that we need to, got it? All right. Mr. Peters, it is yours again.
Great. Thank you very much. And thank you, board members, for your trust, and I'll hopefully continue to earn it throughout the year. And congratulations to Mr. Iverson, Mr. Morford on those positions as well. We'll move on to the district highlight section of our meeting tonight. We have two tonight. The first is Viking to Wildcat, and there's some handouts in front of the board members if you're interested in looking at them. Superintendent McKay, do you have some information on this highlight?
Yeah, I'm not going to give you a whole lot of information because I would like at some point in time in the future, our Director of Future Learning, Jeff Cochran, and our high school principal to come and speak to you about the details, but I'll just give you the quick version is that we now have a formal agreement with Central Washington University where our students will be able to earn an AA degree accepted by Central Washington University based on the credit course, college and high school course offerings that we offer within our high school. So this is a very big step in that offering that. We know that other students have pathways to obtain an AA more than our traditional one through YVCC, where they would go to Running Start and earn that AA and graduate with a high school diploma and an AA degree. This gives our students now another option to actually graduate with a high school diploma and the equivalent of an AA degree through Central Washington University, where if they were to go to Central Washington University, they could move right into their junior year and start their major area of interest. So significant step for our school district. It's my understanding that this partnership in working with Central Washington University is kind of the start of what they hope to expand to. And we are, I don't know if we're actually the first, but I believe we're going to call ourselves the first to make it a formal agreement between the two entities, the university and our school district. So I'll leave the details. There's a handout here for you. It talks about the return on investment and what this financially may mean to a family, being able to have a couple years of free college education, university education. That's on one page. And then on the back page is all of the coursework that students would need to take to meet this requirement.
Kevin, I know you're going to cover this in more detail later, and it's just amazing that they can get half of their bachelor's degree paid for before they leave. That's such a huge savings for families. I noticed under academic writing 1 and 2, those are Central Washington University courses. Does that mean we won't be teaching the UW 131 and 111 classes?
That is a question I can't answer for you right now.
Okay.
That's that. I would assume we're still going to offer that course.
But the ones that meet Central's requirements are these ones here. Okay, that's kind of what I was thinking too. Great. Fantastic.
All right. The second one is more traditional and holiday related, but I think that most of you know that for now over 20 years, the school district has led a program called Adopt a Family. And this program is to support those families in need during the holidays. And it involves all facets of our school and our community, support for school district students and their families, and helping hand to celebrate the holidays. This year, we have a lot of different staff teams there. So there's teams of staff, there's student clubs, there's advisory classes. Members of the Yakima Training Center have involved themselves in these efforts. Individuals who have chosen to support individually from throughout our community as well. I like to say that this year we have a record number of families that the district through the Adopt a Family program is supporting, and a total of 53 individual families that in some way, shape or form will be supporting their efforts and hopefully making their holiday season just a little bit brighter. Our district family services team gathers the information from each family, like the age of the children, their toys, their clothing sizes. That information is then passed on the groups that are supporting each of the families. And then by next Tuesday, all of those gifts are taken to a central location and then they're distributed as well. So pretty incredible efforts. Val Barnett is at the high school, kind of the organizational person of all these efforts. And I think just goes to show about all the great people we have within our school district who care about families as well as our community as well. So two pretty good highlights tonight to share with you.
Fantastic. And I heard a little bit of buzz before the meeting that it sounds like we've covered all of the needs. Is that right? Or is there still time to bring stuff in on Monday? Oh, I got it. So we could still bring stuff in perhaps Monday if we wanted to adopt a family.
Yep.
Okay, excellent. Terrific. Thank you very much, Kevin. Our next order of business is item 5, suggestions and comments from the audience. And we have some audience here this evening. I'll just remind those who are speaking, it looks like we have one person signed up to speak, that we invite all community members to address the board on an issue or topic. The agenda item titled Suggestions, Comments from the Audience is for any comments related to topics that are not on the agenda. The audience can also provide informal comments on specific agenda items after being recognized. Individual remarks are limited to 3 minutes. Patrons making comments are asked to begin by identifying themselves. So you just say, hello, my name is. Please appoint a spokesperson if the concern is a group concern. If desired, you may email written documentation to the executive assistants to be included as part of the official meeting record. While the board will listen to all public comments carefully, the board cannot respond to comments spontaneously or without further deliberation. So it's not like a back and forth, unfortunately. The board may direct the superintendent to respond to the issues expressed at a later date. Also of note, complaints about specific personnel will not be heard in open session and will not be part of the record of any public meeting. Harassing or derogatory statements about any persons or groups of persons will not be heard. Okay, with that said, we have I think it's Fidel Pedroia is signed up to speak. Maybe Pedroza.
Good evening. My name is Fidel Pedraza. So my concerns right now are actually coming through. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of the gang activity that's going on through Selah, the community of Selah. It's been active since I was a young kid, and longer probably. Now stating to a mural that's pointed out on a wall. My children had to pay close attention to me when I had to tell my children of who they're associated with, who they're affiliated with, who they hang out with, what they do after school activities, would be based on my kids getting told, hey, Dad, they're telling me that mural has a gang-related activity on there, which it does. It's the Wegla, the northern bird, also used for the Cesar Chavez union, the Farm Workers Union. But if you come from a background, you would automatically see the lights. My daughters know nothing better than, God's house, God's word, to keep the community safe, and so on and so forth, Guys, I'd like to bring up this topic because I was sitting in the bathroom at the Selah Middle School wrestling team just this Monday. I'm in the bathroom with my son, and, I see a gun fall in the stall next to me. Now, what do? Do I report it? Do I keep me and my son safe? Which all I did was pick it up and leave. Pick it up and leave. There's too many people here. My concern was me and my child, and that the person got out of there. I immediately got my stuff and left. Guys, there's concerns. I don't make reports as much because it comes back punishable. bodily harm, family, going so on and so forth. But, you know, people that know me know that I mean good for the community, you know. I have 2 children that are soon to be state contender wrestlers for Selah School District, which I'm actually looking pretty close. If things don't change and I don't see changes happening, I'll be pulling my children being homeschooled and or transferred to another school that do see, you know, these gang activities going on. If you have any questions, feel free to talk to me on the side. Feel free to answer any questions that you guys need and want. If you guys need to get topped up on, you know, any gang activity, you know, I've been out of the gangs for over 15 years and I still see everything because at one point I used to do that, you know, and now it's raising my children right and breaking chains that my family has afflicted on me and that other people are telling children is right and it's not. I appreciate each and every one of you for your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Fidel. Our next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. And there are a number of issues which we will hold a voice vote here after we've looked at all of the issues. The first being the Human Resources Action Sheet, the second payroll, goods and services. It's a real light Human Resources Action Sheet today. Is there anything we need to focus on there, Chris?
Nothing to highlight on HR action and the payroll goods and services. In the interest of time with the reports tonight, I'd like to pass on that as well.
Okay, great. Next up is a first reading of policy updates, 6600 transportation, 5005 employment and volunteers, disclosure, certification requirements, assurances, and approval. And the board's able to see on the board docs the revisions that have been made to these. I think they're revisions. No, the policies on transportation and employment and volunteers. Kevin, is there anything we need to pay special attention to in those first readings?
No, just strengthening policy 5005 with regards to disclosure, certification requirements, assurances for employment and volunteers. And then 6600 transportation. This comes about in a district that's relatively close to us that a few years ago had a really horrible situation take place in the Pasco School District where a person came onto the bus and then you had a firearm on them. So this went through the legislature. The legislature made some changes in regards to laws in regards to bus trespassing, and this is the result of it as well.
Great. And then at our next meeting, we'll vote to approve that agenda or not approve those policy updates. There is actually 2 donations to approve of. The first, Mr. Pedroza, I think will be happy to know that there's been a donation of wrestling mats from the Viking crew. The Summer Clark and the rest of the school supporters there have made a donation of $2,000 to purchase new wrestling mats. The second donation is a donation of I think it says soundproofing. Is that right? Oh, it's in the band room. Excuse me. This is from Dennis Clark's Acoustical to help in the band room. I think we've kind of covered that. Is there anything we want to add to that? Those donations? Great.
I just really quickly, I'd like to just publicly thank Mr. Or Dennis for his or Jason for his contribution. $35,000, and basically he's soundproofing the entire band room. And he has a student child in the program, but wonderful. We're very grateful.
I'd like to add to that. Both Jason and Summer have been very active in the band program and obviously with the wrestling program as well. And so these are great donations and I really want to thank them for those.
Yeah, we owe you a great deal of gratitude for those. Thank you very much. The final issue on the consent agenda is some good news. We've settled a collective bargaining agreement with the Coaching Co-curricular Association in Selah. There was been some delay, and as a result of that, we had to kind of do some negotiation, but that's been resolved now. People are able to, if your board members have seen that collective bargaining agreement, and that's part of the consent agenda as well. Superintendent McKay, do you want to add anything to that item?
Yeah, yep, very quick. As you know, we haven't bargained with our coaches groups for 4 years because they were on a 4-year contract. Now they've renewed a 4-year contract. In the process of doing that, our typical protocol is to compare with the other CWAC districts and see how our salaries line up for our coaches. We did fall behind. We're one of the few districts that don't tie our steps on our coaches' salary schedule to any sort of cost of living increase or IPD in any given year. So we fell behind a little bit. So we did get a 4-year agreement, first year being 10%, and that's to supposedly bring us up to the top third, which it doesn't quite do in a lot of the positions, but it gets us more in line. So 10% first year, second year is 2%, and then 1% in years 3 and 4. So basically that's the main change in the contract. There's a slight change on postseason weekly pay, but other than that, that's it. So we're pleased and they're pleased. I think it's a good contract moving forward for the next 4 years.
And could I ask Chris, who is it president of the association? Who's the chairman of the association for the co-curricular?
They actually nominate or appoint somebody to the position. It's not the SEA president or anything in this case. I think there was a co-leadership on this. I think Mr. Harris was one of them. Mr. Haste was in there for a bit, and I'm not sure who else is involved at this point. But
Gotcha.
yeah.
Okay, great. All right. I move that we approve the consent agenda. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any comments or questions on the consent agenda? All right, all those in favor of approving the agenda signify with an aye. Aye. All those opposed? And abstentions? All right, the consent agenda passes. Move on now to hear some student voice this evening. We have 2 of our student board representatives. It's the junior class holding it down for us tonight. Do you have anything you'd like to share with the board this evening?
We don't have anything specific, but after our last meeting, our student representatives, we kind of were still talking to like peers and students, like kind of that ongoing like technology debate in school. So it's just been cool to hear more student perspective on that. And it was nice to be able to talk to the board about that. And I think Charlie and I just wanted to kind of say that to the point of the public comment, something that we have been noticing a lot in our schools is there has been quite an uptake in violence, especially gang violence. There was a pretty huge incident just a few weeks ago. There's been quite a few fights, especially at Selah High School, and that's just something that we've been noticing. Yeah, that's just what we wanted to talk about. I know that's a much larger issue that but we just wanted to make sure that that's aware and out there, and students are seeing that too. And it's obvious that parents and community are seeing it. So that's just something that we wanted to share.
Great. Thank you very much, Claire. It kind of fits nicely in with some of the questions and survey responses that we're going to see here from, I think Hunter is going to present some student data on what's the climate data, I guess you would call it. Is that right?
Climate, and also we'll be going over some behavioral referral data for all the schools.
Well, there are some questions about safety, I think, and do you feel safe at the school?
Absolutely.
Are there any questions or comments for the board representatives from the rest of the board, student board reps? Thank you for being here. I really am interested in the cell phone policy and continuing that conversation. I think I said this last time, but I'm hoping we can get some parents involved. And when I go to visit schools, I'm asking all the principals what their thoughts are about it. So I hope we continue to have that be an open conversation that we keep looking at. And the issue of safety is one that is probably our #1 priority out of everything that we do as a board. So I appreciate you bringing that up, and the community member as well. With that, let's turn to the Executive Director for Student and Learning. Hunter System, excuse me, has a report for us that is relevant to the conversation we were just having. Hunter.
Thank you. And I might need to stand up and get a little closer so I can talk through some of the data that's on there. Tonight, last time I presented to you guys, it was all academic focused, mainly SBA and iReady. Today, we're gonna go over 3 different data sets. One is the fall climate survey data. One is the fall SEL survey data. And the third one will be our behavioral referral data that should show kind of trends that we're seeing currently this school year for both kind of the culture within our schools, the climate within our schools, the emotional well-being of our students, and also some of the externalized behaviors that we're seeing in all of our schools. So any questions on any of those before I jump in? I'm probably gonna go pretty quickly through some of these. I think you guys got the reports beforehand. It's gonna be hard to see on the screen here on some of them. But if you have any questions about any of these, I'm happy to sit down and analyze them further. So starting with the climate survey, this is just an FYI reminder. We administer these at all sites twice a year, all sites pre-K and all sites for staff and for families. Twice a year, we do it during the conference weeks. The stakeholders for the climate survey are students, with a caveat that is 3rd grade and above. We do not have our pre-K through 2nd grade students take really any self-perception surveys. Developmentally, it's been shown that it's not effective. Kindergartners have a hard time answering questions about what they think or feel about in that form. But all sites do have staff and family responses. Reasons why we do this, it's part of best practices, and it's also requirements for some of our basic education funding. We also have some additional grants that require that we do these types of surveys so that we can get additional services, like our mental health counselor at our high school. That's one of the requirements, is that we do survey our community. It's around 30 questions for each group. There's a little bit of variance there because families have a few more questions than students or staff do, because they're answering it both for themselves and sometimes for their students too, their perceptions. There's 4 domains for all 3 groups. It's around relationships, sense of belonging, safety, and harassment, intimidation, and bullying. And just as a reminder, this is an anonymous survey, so we don't have any student, staff, or family data where we can identify who's who. So this is a completely anonymous survey for climate. So questions on that? These first few slides are actually all the data you're gonna look at. I want you to focus on mainly the colors that you see. Green means they responded favorably. So, because this is impossible for you all to read probably up there. And the order I have it in is it's relationships for students, family, and staff, and then we'll go to sense of belonging for students, family, and staff. Look at generally big picture, look at how much green is there, how much yellow and red are there, and comparing perspectives of students, family, and staff, knowing that these questions align pretty well. Make sense? So this is for relationships, and I will also pull out my analysis of the 4 different domains for the 3 different stakeholders at the end, so that way we have to go through every question. So this is relationships for students, relationships for family, relationships for staff. Second domain, sense of belonging for students, sense of belonging for family, sense of belonging for staff. Safety for students, their perception, family perceptions of safety, and then staff perceptions of safety. And the last one, harassment, intimidation, and bullying, students, family, and staff. So my analysis, as I was looking through, the hard part of this data that we look at is it is dynamic, and we can filter it to have to kind of drill down to different groups. What you looked at was aggregate across all of our sites for all the stakeholders. So when we analyze this at the school level, we're able to filter it for just that school or specific grade levels. But this is what stood out to me as we started to process this. Strength-based, areas that responded most in the positive for students, for relationships, 93% of students shared that staff care about their learning. For sense of belonging, 94% of students shared they are accepting of the, oh, someone clicked, you're okay. 94% of students shared they are accepting of those different than themselves, and 94% believe it is wrong to discriminate against someone. Safety, 78% of students feel safe in their school. And for HIB, harassment, intimidation, bullying, 79% of students never or rarely hear hurtful comments about religion in school. For students, the areas that had the most amount of yellow or red, I combined these, yellow, red, and the left side was light green and dark green. For relationships, 42% of students shared that staff don't ask them what they want to learn. 25% of students disagree that they get to help decide what is best for their class or for their school. And 39% of students feel students don't care about others' feelings. With HIB, 36% of students hear hurtful comments about race frequently or often. For family, you'll start to see some correlation, some alignment, and some variance in regards to family and staff and students of like which stood out the most. 94% of staff think a family thinks staff encourage their child to participate, and their child has at least one trusted adult at school. Sense of belonging, 98% of families think their child believes it's wrong to discriminate against someone. 88% feel safe in their child's school, and 88% think their child's school is welcoming. 98% reported their child did not hear hurtful comments about immigrants, gender, identity, race, religion, or sexual orientation from adults at school. Areas in the most negative in regards to for families, 29% disagree that their child is asked what they want to learn about. 27 disagree that the child has chances to help decide what is best for their class or school. That one aligns very almost identical to what students said. 26% disagree that students in their child's school are sensitive to others' feelings. That also aligns as well. For HIB, 16% shared that their child hears hurtful comments about race frequently or often. And this is the last, and then I'll take kind of any questions you might have around the climate survey data, and I'll talk a little bit about how we're using this both at the district and school level. This is our staff perception. 98% agree that staff encourage student participation and that staff care about their students' learning. That second one aligned with the biggest strength for students as well. 96% agree that students have at least one friend that can help them, and that they believe it's wrong to discriminate against someone. 88% agree their school is welcoming and that their students feel safe in their school. And then 100% agree that they have not heard hurtful comments about immigrants from adults at school. The areas in the most negative for staff for their perceptions were that 29% disagree that teachers ask students what they want to learn about. Again, that aligns with what students shared as well. 18% disagree that students have a chance to help decide what is best for their school. That one also aligns with students. 33% disagree that students act in a way that is sensitive to the feelings of others. Again, another alignment. And then 10% heard hurtful comments about race from students frequently or often. So what we have noticed in looking at analyzing this data, and this was just the very high and the very low of this. And you can see there's a lot there. There's 30 questions for 3 different groups. What we noticed comparing from last year to this year, we did see a general more positive responses overall across all of our sites for almost all of the questions. Now it was nominal. High school, for example, it was almost like 1% to 2% more positive responses than the negative as compared to years past. But there wasn't any drastic drops that we noticed. We're noticing the biggest one is that students don't care about other people's feelings, taking the perspective of others. Well, we're still noticing that hurtful comments about race is a concern, but also overall, generally, we have more positive perceptions of the climate in our schools than we do negative, which I think is a celebration to highlight. But also knowing that we have some work to do in regards to this. How we're analyzing this depends a little bit at the school developmental level of the school. Today, actually, we had Thor's Council, which is a advisory group for Mr. Monty and staff at the high school. And they actually were the first people at the school to go through the data, analyze it, filter it, and look at it in different ways. They also looked at behavioral data today as well. The one connection they made is we have a different perception. Like we have more negative perception than our staff do. Like staff think everything's fine. We're saying, hold the phone. And so that was kind of what they were grappling with. The next steps for buildings is to have middle school is going to have students look at it, a leadership group will look at it. All of our buildings will have their building leadership teams look at their building specific data and to set kind of goals, with knowing that we're going to get this data again this spring and then analyze to see, do what we do, their efforts make any difference. So any questions about the climate survey data?
What's the youngest students that are taking this?
Third grade.
So like when we look at safety, it's a big picture for assume hopefully that like pretty much older. And then those numbers that are unsafe brand, you know, like probably higher than right. I would kind of look at how that, if we talk about safety, that safety feeling goes from this to middle to high school or high.
You know, actually, our highest level of kids feeling unsafe, don't quote me on it because I got to look back at the actual data because it's hard to memorize each school specific. I think our younger grade level, like so CIS's data specifically shows that they're feeling a little more unsafe. Some of that could be where high school students feel more confident in their ability to respond or to escape. It also, some of the questions around emotional safety. So I don't know if that's answering your question, but it's not a linear where I feel more safe in elementary, less safe in middle school, and far less safe in high school. That's not how we're seeing the trajectory of it. That makes sense? Yeah.
I think I would be interested in doing, maybe not all of the first
Yeah. And you guys can't see up there, but the questions that we asked for safety specifically were, I feel safe in my school. These questions are written so that way a third grader could understand it, right? And it also is not so kiddish that high schoolers are going to roll their eyes at answering that question. I feel safe in my school. Students in my school care about other people's feelings. Students in the school act in a way that is sensitive to other people's feelings. My school is welcoming and safe. And if I report a safety concern, I trust the staff will be able to handle it.
I thought it could go either way, that the younger would feel more vulnerable and as they got older, more capable. I thought that was interesting, but I could see it the other way as well, as there's more dangers, I guess, as kids start driving and doing all kinds of other stuff. Were there, just from your memory, I'm not going to quote you on it, as you said, are there any other building sort of differences that jump out at you from the survey, whether it's safety or any other?
I think the HIB portion is one that has the most amount of yellow and red, kind of like it stands out the most for students specifically, especially at the high school level. So the hurtful the discriminatory comments is still something. I mean, I reported on that last year. Has been a concern that students are saying they're hearing. Adults are in the discrepancy. Another connection some of our high school students made was a lot of this is happening not within the classroom. It's happening in the parking lot or at lunch or as they're passing each other in the hall. So some of the perception of why staff might be seeing it as not as big of an issue is because they're not necessarily always aware of it. They're not hearing it directly. And then the caring about other people's feelings and the kind of their perspective is one that that has stood out more this year than it did last year when we looked at the climate survey data.
Claire and Charlie, do you have any reports from the hallway or the parking lot that you could add to it? Or, I mean, that's a lot of information to take in, but what's your reaction to the first part of the presentation, if you have one?
Well, I had a question about, do you have like the data for like how many people like took each survey?
That's a really good question. Actually, I was gonna talk about that. So, for the height, well, the student, data, we had, almost 3,000 students, no, sorry, almost 2,700 students district-wide take it this year, which is about 90% of our students. For these types of surveys to, be valid to look at, you have to have a specific number size, responses, and it changes depending on how big the group that you're surveying. So with 3,600 students in our district, we needed to have at least 1,200 responses for it to be statistically valid. So, and then that's district wide. At each school, we needed about 60% of students to respond to it, and we went over that threshold for each. So we can say confidently the survey responses are valid for students both district wide and at the building level. Same thing for staff. The family or the community one where we did not have as high of completion rate. So at the building level, we can't say that it's valid except for at Robert Lintz. They had the highest rate, and their end size was where it made it valid, where we could say, yeah, you can relatively within margin of error say that this is pretty accurate. And district-wide we can, because we had enough cumulative district-wide to say it counted. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
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 I don't have memorized how many exactly for each group, but there was enough for students and staff and family just for district.
Going back to like more of like the hurtful and hateful comments that are being made, although they're not being made in the classroom like directly, like sometimes they are, but when they are, they're typically like really loud. And sometimes like staff don't really like look at it, or they don't go into it, or they kind of just like, it kind of just gets ignored. And the same for like when it's in the hallway. When it's in the hallway, it's typically being yelled over everyone else. I've heard the N slur, the F slur, like I've heard a ton of different slurs being used in the hallway, but it's being announced in a very loud way that staff should be able to hear it because it's near a lot of different staff and
Yeah.
people.
And I mean, I've done a lot of work with some of our students through, especially middle school and high school last few years. One of the themes that they have shared, I mean, what you said, lines with this is staff either don't respond or they don't know they don't know what to do. And from students' perspective, they're like, I don't really care. You got to do something, right? So that's we've continued to try to unpack with our staff, like how can you respond? What should you do to give some type of protocol for when they do, if and when they do hear it.
Like when staff do speak up about it, it's typically like the students like don't respond to it usually. It's usually just, oh, okay, and then it happens again 5-10 minutes later.
Just a couple of maybe comments and questions. And this is probably not politically correct for me to say this, but I do know that it's going all directions. I think we typically say racial comments are white people using it against other races, but I know from the teenagers that I talk to that it's going.
Yeah,
Several
that is what we've heard from students too. It is not isolated to one racial group. We do hear it from boys more than we do from girls. That's one thing but it is across all. It's become a norm, and almost what I hear from students is kids aren't saying it because they're saying it in a joking way. They're not taking it. They don't think it's serious what they're saying. It's become kind of part of their vernacular. Is some of the feedback we've heard from students too.
A lot of them, I think it's a maturity issue. They're using it to get a rise. And it's wrong, obviously, but, and so I'm not excusing it. But I do think it's interesting that, we've really been focusing a lot on the SEL for several years in the district. And yet we'll see it a little bit later that we're seeing a little bit more violence, like Claire said, in the schools. And we're also seeing a rise in like the racial division as well. And I'm curious as to why that's happening. I don't know the answer to that, but I am curious as to why. If we're focusing more on metering our emotions and things like that in the school setting, why are things getting worse? And that's just a question that I have. And then also as far as safety goes, social media is a great place where people for people to air their grievances. And so I know that to back up your data, obviously when people are unhappy with things that are going on at school, they go to, the Selah groups and complain about it. And then if you want to see threads that have lots of comments, those are the ones specifically with the bullying and intimidation. And so I'm curious why the parents are going there rather than coming to the district. So just a couple of
Yeah,
comments.
those are good questions. Okay. Any other thoughts? We do have SEL, and then the behavioral data is something I wanted to dive into more too, so you can see the trends. Good to move on? Okay. So the SEL survey data, this is just, we do 2 surveys. One is a self screener that our staff take. It is a staff perception survey of student SEL skills. It's 6 total questions, 1 for each of the 6 SEL state standards: self-awareness, self-management, self-efficacy, social awareness, social management, and social engagement. So they would fill this out for each person. In elementary, it's in their homeroom, and in secondary, it's in their advisory classroom. And then this is given 3 times a year: beginning of the year, middle of the year, end of the year. It's a screening tool that's used in conjunction with the SEL benchmark survey to triangulate who are students that struggle with social emotional skills to try to provide additional support. The SEL benchmark is a little bit different. This is a student perception of their own skills. We changed this year. Last year it was way too many questions. We wanted it to mirror the staff SEL screener. So the students this year that took it, there's 6 questions based off the 6 SEL standards that were just a little bit more student friendly language, and they were rating themselves on it. So this took about 5 minutes for them to complete. With that said, this year we had, these are the actual questions that were asked to students, so you could see them. I wanted just to be fully transparent of what questions we're asking. Students would rate themselves on a 1 through 4 scale, 1 being low, 4 being high. We also added this year a kind of a qualifier question. If a student rated themselves on a 1 on any of the questions, what we heard from students and from our counselors more specifically is our students that are struggling more with like mental health, we need to have some type of way of identifying. We know we have lots of students who are struggling with some area of mental health, to be able to kind of identify who they are to see if they need additional support. So there was an additional question if they scored a 1, and it asked them if they needed support around anxiety, depression, substance use, identity, family dynamics, or friendships. Because those are the ones that seem to come through the counseling office most often. So this year with our SEL data, 94 students reported that they wanted additional support with anxiety, 77 with friendships, 56 with depression, 44 students with family dynamics, 31 students with identity, and 10 students with substance use in some form. Again, this is 3rd through 12th grade, so no pre-K through 2nd grade students. The other caveat to this is we had an error in the programming of the SEL survey. When it went out, and students went to about half of our students, all students were supposed to take it, about half of them, they went to go fill it out and said, you've already completed this. And so we didn't have data for them. So my rough guess would be double this, and this is probably the amount of students that would have screened in district-wide for these 6 different areas.
And this is an anonymized survey, or is
So
there?
this one is not.
So if there's
anonymous.
94 students that
Yeah, because we don't want,
for anxiety,
it feels oh, sorry, go ahead.
identify who those students.
Yeah, it feels unethical to say, are you struggling with depression, and then have no way to connect with them and get them connected to resources. So this one is a non-anonymous survey.
Great, thank you.
Other questions on this? Okay. The last data set that I'll go over is our behavior referral data. This comes from a program called SWIS, School-Wide Information System. It is how our staff members document a behavioral infraction, for lack of a better term. I pulled this data as of December 5th, so it's pretty up to date. We're just as of a week ago. You'll look at total referrals by grade level. So you can see the different flavors of different grades. Average referrals per day, per month, to see how much the schools are processing in regards to behavior referrals. Referrals by student, to see not just looking at total referrals, but like how many of our students are struggling consistently, because you can have one student who has 50 referrals and that's going to skew the data some. And then referrals by behavior type, to see developmentally at grade levels at different schools where students struggling with in regards to their behavior. This is not going to be aggregate. This is not going to be district-wide data. Swiss doesn't have that function. So each school has their own Swiss system that they all use, which is helpful because in the past we didn't have, not all schools use Swiss. Now we can pull and look at and compare apples to apples a little bit. The other thing is we do set thresholds to prioritize supports for students who are consistently showing unexpected behavior. So I'm going to jump in. Well, I'm going to start with high school and go down in order. Okay, so first, this is high school data by grade. 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. You can't see the 12th grade data there, but our 12th grade has the most has the highest number of referrals in high school. This is referral data per day, per month. This is helpful to look at because if you just look at total referrals for a month, some months have fewer days than others. And what we generally want to see, we generally see in October, September, October, November, we see a spike. Honeymoon's over from beginning of the new school year. Learning gets harder. Social dynamics change as they're together. And then we see it start to drop over time. So generally October, November are usually our highest months, and we see it as we put interventions in place, slowly start to decrease. What I always want you to kind of keep in mind is looking at the total number of referrals per grade level, because there is one specific grade that does stand out amongst the other 13. I'll let you guys recognize that you should be able to. This is high school referrals by student. I pulled this as any student with at least 3 referrals for the school year, which would be about 1 a month, or a little bit more, a little less than 1 a month. High school, we had 31 students that had 3 referrals through December 5th, at least 3 referrals. You can also see we have 3 students on the end that had 8 or more. This is now referrals by behavior for the high school. So the number 1 behavior we see, and again, these are all major referrals, so what we consider like a major infraction. Skipping is by far and away not by far and away, but is the highest behavior concern that we have from staff of kids just leaving class, leaving school. Underneath that is inappropriate language or being out of bounds, so leaving school as well. For middle school, you can see number of referrals. 6th grade is just has our lowest amount of referrals for a grade level, and 7th and 8th go up. Referrals per day, again, that kind of similar dynamic, starts low, starts to creep up in November. And these are what you're looking at is average referrals per day. So December, we had a few days, so it's kind of hard to see if December actually has decreased or not, but I can run that in a month and let you guys know. For middle school, there was 39 students that had 3 or more referrals. So a few more students in the high school with 1 less grade level, making me assume that they have less referrals overall than the high school, but the referrals they do have are coming from a specific group of students.
That's less so than the high school. I'm looking at, like, is it just a small number of people that have a huge number of referrals? That's more true in the middle school than it is in the high school.
Yeah, that's correct. That's probably a better way to
High school, the graph was not as much of a upswing as this one did. Yeah.
And then the highest behavior concern at the top, the 2 closest are disruption and abusive language or inappropriate language, profanity at the middle school. For CIS, you can see, and this is the grade level that we have noticed has had the highest need in regards to externalized behavior, is our 3rd grade group. I don't know if you guys I'm sure you guys are aware of the 3rd grade group. It is double the amount of referral, at least double the amount of referrals of any other grade level that are close to it that we have. They have 316 referrals total for third grade for this year. They're also, SIS is processing more referrals per day. You can see the high water mark of 9.8. So it's 9.8 referrals in September to start off the year. Usually September is one of our lower months, especially at the beginning of September, but it was very high. It has started to decrease some, but it is at a higher level than our other schools. And then SIS students, there's 57 total students with at least 3 referrals. So a larger number of students that are consistently like struggling with behavior. I would also say that typically in elementary, we do not like to use exclusionary discipline. We've had to use that as a tool this year in regards to safety. So we have had more suspensions within our SIS specifically than we typically have in the past. And then the number one behavior that we have seen is physical aggression. Not atypical for this grade level. And for elementary grades, physical aggression is typically something we see in younger grades more than we do at high school. High school, when they get upset, they skip and they leave, generally, right? But we also do see high school, if it is physical aggression, it's more good, they can actually cause a lot of harm, right? So physical aggression is 40% of all of the referrals that Swiss has processed. JCP, you can see the total referrals for grade level 141 for first grade, 95 for second grade. They've started to show typically what we see is the steady decline over time. Their high water mark of referrals per day was about 4. And their total, they had 23 total students that met the threshold of at least three referrals for the year. The number one behavior concern here is, again, physical aggression. I would say that is something, the K through 2 grade band is something we see with students. They are not able to communicate what their emotions, what their feelings are, so they get frustrated and push or hit. We don't usually see, we do see it at the intermediate level. We're seeing it at a higher rate this year than we have in the past. And then for LINTs, pre-K and K, the reason why pre-K is pretty suppressed is there's a higher staffing ratio within the pre-K requirements. So there's multiple adults at all times in the pre-K classrooms. They're also there for a shorter period of time. Amount of referrals processed per day, high water mark of about 3.85. Total students that had 3 or more referrals at LINTs were 19 total students. And the number one behavioral concern, physical aggression. So all 3 elementaries, physical aggression was the top behavioral concern. So that was a lot that I went through in a short period of time. Any questions you have for me?
I just want to add to my comment earlier that I don't blame the school district for all the problems. I actually feel like a lot of these problems start in the home. And as parents, we're not doing our job very well to teach our kids to respect the schools and to respect the teachers. And so I think there needs to be parents who, instead of just blaming everything on the schools, we should take responsibility as well.
You know, it's yes, and I love that we serve all kids regardless, and our staff, from what I see, work really hard to keep a safe environment. We are seeing a higher need in regards to externalized behavior this year than we have in the past. It does tax the system when you have students that are dysregulated, and it's hard to learn at times.
Hunter, what is the process of involving parents in some of the students that are having multiple issues in school?
So we follow a process called MTSS because we love acronyms. It stands for multi-tiered systems of support. I mentioned the thresholds. All of our buildings run weekly reports around behavior data that pull 3 or more minor referrals within a week. So minor are more like, hey, this happened. Don't need a big follow-up, but just wanted to document it. 2 or more majors in a week, or 5 or more majors in a month. We set those thresholds based off of the guidelines that Swiss says to filter who are students that are consistently struggling. We generally will put in place, we'll have, if we haven't met on the student, we might meet as a team to say, hey, what are some things we can try differently within the classroom? Those could be additional breaks offered for a student, like for movement breaks, might be earning something. We might start them on a behavior chart where they're tracking their progress of how they're following expectations in class. If it's still showing up on those threshold reports, we might create a more robust behavior support plan. And at that point, if it's still not working over time, we have those interventions in place. We would then probably call a meeting together to talk about, is there additional services beyond just general education that we might need to offer for the students?
And at that last step is when the parents would be involved, or?
No, so sorry. I didn't
okay.
answer. No, parents are, for each major referral, parents should be communicated with. Now, the reality on busy days, does it happen every single time? Probably not every single, but I know our staff work really hard to communicate within 24 hours when there is a major referral that happened, that parents are contacted and communicated with. Parents generally are really supportive and trust that we're not trying to accuse their student of being a bad kid or anything, but and to kind of support what our actions are. Sometimes that's not always the case, but parents should be contacted every single time there is a major referral.
And you talked about meeting together as a team. Is there any way to tell if there's a teacher struggling? Can you sort this data by instructor?
Yeah, so we can pull number of referrals by staff member to see if and that does happen. And sometimes it could be a teacher struggling or a teacher over documenting, like.
Right. Well, that was
Yeah.
part of my question. Are they quick with the trigger
Yeah,
finger kind of
right.
thing?
And also too, if there's we also don't, sometimes we see staff member kind of has the magic with a kid and is able to kind of get by, and then they go on to the next grade level and there's no documentation to say these were concerns, right? And so we're trying to be really consistent with our matrix that we have of saying this is a major behavioral referral that needs to be documented every single time. So that way then when they go to the next school or to the next grade level, we know generally what supports work and what don't. And so it doesn't just stay secret, like hidden knowledge or secret knowledge. Great.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Sarah.
So kind of piggybacking off that so the Swiss data is per school. And you mentioned just now that maybe a teacher doesn't document something. And so my question really is, well, assuming we store this data for each cohort, but that data is not going to follow those students to the next school. So our fifth graders going to the middle school, how do we share that behavioral information?
That's a really good question. Yeah, so we do transition meetings because we have a lot of transitions because we have so many schools. For each grade level leaving, they meet with the receiving grade level team. Tier 1, just more like a general, hey, this is kind of the needs of the group for both academics, for literacy and for math. And for behavioral concerns too. This is generally kind of the flavor you're getting. These are the standards within academics they really have, that they're struggling with still overall as a group. We also do tier 2 and tier 3 meetings to set up, so that way if a kid has supports in place that's really starting to take hold, that we then start the year off with that as well. That is the one downfall of having not having kids like in a K-5 system in elementary. There is, as much as you can try to prepare for that, not having them and seeing their growth over time, and there's some lost in translation there. But we do try to have those meetings where we do share the overall data and student data for students that are consistently struggling, so that way the schools are not completely caught off guard.
So say the middle school, will they have access to the Swiss data from SIS, or is it just something that's discussed in a training?
No, yeah, so we share that they can't log in and pull it from the other school, but we share not graphs like this, but more like like spreadsheets of students at different thresholds.
So they wouldn't be surprised by individual students. I guess that's what I'm getting at, not just the overall, what does it look like?
Sure.
Specifically, if you've got cohort that's difficult, you might benefit from knowing specifics
Yeah.
on the behavior and the individual.
Yeah, I would say most, yes, with the caveat that sometimes trauma happens over summer, things change, dynamics change, and a kid that has never struggled ever in school is showing behaviors we've never seen before. But we're trying to get away from that kind of that hidden knowledge, secret knowledge I was talking about. So that way it is, we know for kids that need the most amount of support that they have that as they enter the new school.
You may have answered this, but why do we have different Swiss for each school? Why don't we have a district? Why?
Swiss just doesn't have that they don't have that capability. So it's not a, it's a,
K-5, we could do it. Why don't we do that? Like, why don't we lump our K-5 kids into one Swiss data?
oh, that's a good question. I don't know if I can answer. I don't know if I have an answer to that.
Just curious, it
Yeah.
feels really kind of compartmentalized. Worry that things may not get past them. Need to.
It seems like there might be some advantage to kids having a clean slate too, that you wouldn't want too much of a label to follow a kid.
And you within Swiss, you can go back to it. Once they're at the loaded into the school for the next year, you can look back at the history of that specific students. You're just not going to have the other school's more overall history. If that makes sense. So we can pull a specific student's history for behavioral referrals. It's where we document all of our referrals. We also do, if we get to the level of needing to use suspension, that is documented in Skyward. That's a requirement from the state that we report those to the state. Swiss is not reported out anywhere. It is our own internal documentation system for behavior.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask, do we know, we did the climate survey with the teachers on the behaviors and attitudes. Do we do anything to, in that regard, to find out if they feel supported, if they feel like there is connection between the administration and the teachers, so that we're making sure that the teachers who actually have their boots on the ground are agreeing with the tactics that we're using?
Sure. No, that's not part of our questions currently. It is a good strategy. With the Qualtrics survey, we wanted, at least starting off, to have every question be as aligned. So we're asking students a question and we're asking a similar question to staff and to families. We can alter it, and we are going to make a little bit of a tweak in regards to the rating system for our next administration of the climate survey based off of actually some community feedback that we got. That's something I'm considering. This is our second time administrating this climate survey. So I didn't want to make too many changes until we've gotten a little better at analyzing the data we have first before we add additional. But I am in agreement with that. I think having that type of questions to see how staff are perceiving, while also you create too many questions, you're going to get less completion rate. So we've tried to manage what's the just right amount and just the most important questions we ask that we get engagement with it from all stakeholders.
I wonder if we asked, do teachers feel safe, what the response would be, if that would be different.
I think that might be one of the questions I don't have.
I'll check.
Yeah.
Anything else, Charlie or Claire? I don't mean to catch you as you're coming back in. Anything else from the board for Hunter?
I just have a quick question. Especially in these lower grades, when the kids start showing any sign of aggression, how fast are they pulled out of the classroom? Or are they only pulled out when they start like attacking like other students?
That's a really good question. And physical aggression in itself can be somewhat unclear. Like is me pushing someone in line, is that physical aggression? And that's, I would say, is much different than me punching someone in the face, right? So we've also tried to really define what is physical aggression, what are these different buckets mean? So that way when we're coding it, we're all looking at the what the actual behaviors are. Your question was around, are kids pulled immediately? I would say at the younger level, like kindergarten, kids tend to get frustrated and push, or, we wouldn't always pull someone from class. We might have an adult step in and support, so that way they're not missing out on learning. It just more depends on kind of the severity of what that aggression looks like.
Good. All right. Thank you very much, Hunter. We'll move on to our next report, which is the year-end financial report from Chris and Stephanie, as part of the Associate Superintendent for District Operations report.
All right, we have a lot of slides here, and so what we've decided to do is just focus in on a few of the slides. A lot of the information you've seen before. The first few slides of the presentation, we like to include in our financial reports because we want our readers of the financial statements and these types of things on our website to understand what drives what we do and how we allocate funding. So I'm going to skip past those first slides and go to slide number 12. And this gives you an overview of all 5 funds in the district and where we landed with each fund as of August 31. Oh, okay. So where we landed at August 31, 24. So we're going to start with the general fund. I'm going to provide a quick overview on that. You can see there that our revenue is 62.9 million. And 62.9 million in or 62.4 million in expenditures. So the net there, you can see, as I gave you an overview last meeting, we ended up in the black. You may ask the question on the next slide, how did we end up in the black when we projected a deficit of 2.2 million? There were a few things that came into play here. Stephanie and I basically combed through all of them. We've discussed these with Kevin. We had savings that we were able to recognize during the school year 23-24, a variety of things with travel, PD, supplies, and such. We also had use of program capacity. So what we do when we go through and balance out our program budgets every year, if we have leftover learning assistance money or Title I money or these grants and funding where we may lose the funding, we'll go through and decide, okay, these other expenditures here, these staffing positions meet the qualifications or the to-dos for those other programs. So we move expenditures around. Well, that helps save money on the basic ed levy side when we're able to do that. So that's one reason. Another one, unused capacity, where in budgeted expenditures that we didn't fully use. So we had some of those capacities left. Also carryovers, we do have, and I'll go through those carryovers in a minute. We have cash in the bank for certain programs and such that provided our ability to recognize a positive ending amount in our fund balance. Also additional MSOC and state funding that we received. And then finally, levy support for projected program overages. For instance, special education is a perfect example. We projected to be more in the red than we were. We served more students in special ed, so therefore we received more revenue. We always allocate part of our levy to offset program overages, and special education's the key one, and we did not need the full amount budgeted in the levy. So that's another reason we ended up in the black. The next slide just gives you some of those key things that we focused on during the year in 23-24, and just a reminder that we went through our process for reductions for this current school year, and those are the key things. All right. Stephanie's going to go to slide 17.
All right, so taking a quick look, the next couple slides are just a visual of the revenues and expenditures for last year. Overall increase in revenues from the year before is about 4.1%, so $2.5 million in revenue. And then for expenditures, we had an increase of 4.2% and 2.5 million in the expenditure side, so almost a equal offset there. And then what we also like to do at year end is take a look at the differences between the prior year and the year that just completed. So between 2022-23 and 23-24, we've lined out by category the revenues and the expenditure side and the changes and the differences between the two. And we've highlighted some on this slide. Some of them we've already talked to you guys about quite a bit. but we, just some ones to point out is like levy, we had an increase there of 18%. Of course, with our higher levy rate, we have more collections on the revenue side. Other state programs, we had a 22% increase from the prior year, and most of that's due to our CTE program and the expansion of that, and some additional CTE grants that we received last year. Federal, you'll see a big negative there, the 1.351 million in federal revenues. That's because of COVID. So we've spent all of our ESSER money as of last year. There was just a little bit residual that we spent in the 23-24 year compared to the year before. So that's all gone, and that's why you see that big negative there. Jumping down to expenditures, you'll see a lot of the same changes mirrored down there. So I won't go over those, but one thing I will point out, support services, you'll see an increase of about $1 million there. That's mostly due to utility and insurance increases. We've seen a large spike in that just with the overall cost of doing business, essentially.
And nutrition.
And nutrition. Yeah, we had our nutrition carryover, so we're working on spending those dollars so that we'll see a spike in expenditures on that side as well. Let's go forward. This is just that was just another view of the expenditures, but we'll look at it by object. So what type of expenditures they are. You can see certificated classified salaries and benefits had their normal increase 9.5, 5.9. But then you'll see the material supplies, purchase services, travel, and capital outlay. We have negative amounts there that correlate to what Chris was talking about in the cuts that we made this last year with the budget reductions.
Okay. Gonna jump to slide 22. We wanted to give a little bit of a roadmap or history, if you will, on how we ended up to where we're at with finances. Fortunately, Selah, through the COVID times and we'll just go back to 2019. That's when the McCleary lawsuit was settled. Additional funding was funneled through to school districts for compensation increases. That occurred, but at the same time, the legislature got rid of the state salary schedule. They eliminated the mix factor to help with the allocations they provide for staffing salaries, and they replaced that with the state average. In 2020, that's when COVID hits. We have 4 years of additional money, 8.7 million in total. And as those years had progressed, inflation rising higher than the rate of funding provided. So there's all of this created this perfect storm. We feel fortunate that as a district, and thank you to the board for your leadership, that we are in a fiscally sound position right now. And I think that we weathered this storm very well. We still have the big issues like a lot of other school districts in making sure and hoping that the legislature takes care of some of the funding issues, but we are in a good place financially moving forward at this point in time.
Chris, I appreciate that, but you guys do the heavy lifting in that regard, so.
Well, thank you. So with that, I mean, obviously we still have budget challenges. Projected expenditures obviously are still rising at a higher rate than revenues. The funding gaps and salaries that's just a big issue. The insufficient funding for MSOCs, for transportation and special education. There's those things that are out there that the legislature is hopefully going to deal with. But in my opinion, the biggest one is the salary gap, and nobody's really wanting to talk about it right now. And when I say salary gap, as a reminder, it's what we're being funded for versus actual salaries. They're not recognizing years of experience in education on a teacher's salary schedule when they fund us for those amounts. And now every district's on their own in negotiating a teacher's salary schedule and what those increases are from their own schedule. So it just creates problems, but we're hopeful that we can keep moving forward with the legislature and that they make some good decisions for us. This next slide on slide 24 basically just gives you an overview of what is included in the reserved portion of the fund balance. Remember, we ended the year with $11.8 million in our reserve and cash reserve. Part of that is reserved fund balance, and then there's an unreserved fund balance. So the reserved, we have building budget carryovers. We allow a 15% carryover for our buildings. We have that. We have nutrition. This is the biggest one. Our nutrition program, the revenues and the carryover within that program have to stay within the program. And we have a carryover of $860,000. We're going to spend a good 500,000-ish of that this year, putting a new walk-in freezer refrigerator unit behind John Campbell. When we built the school, we didn't know we were going to be community eligibility provision where we're feeding all students for free. We're serving way more food than we projected back then. So we have a big carryover for nutrition. We have funding set aside in the reserves for when we decide to move money over to the capital projects fund once the plans are solidified moving forward on the needs there with support for facilities. And then reserve for special education support. We always need to keep that at the forefront because we're underfunded in special ed. And then we just have other few reserves there. So you've got that. You've got the board parameters, which in the policy requires 2% of the 8% in emergency fund monies, budget contingency fund of 3% and cash flow requirement for 3%. And really cash flow runs over 4%, but we have that in the parameter. Okay, so I just quickly want to look at the 4-year forecast after we ended the 23-24 year. This slide here shows our fund balance history and shows what we're projecting in the next 4 years with no additional reductions. Just basically in year 4, we'd be down to 5% in our reserve if we just left everything be and things played out like they have here with our projected increases. So the second history there is if we do provide or plan for some level of reduction, drops us to 8% in year 4. This shows $250,000 in reductions in 25-26, and then these are cumulative reductions. So then another 500 in 26-27 and another 500 in 27-28. Now, we're hopeful, but we can't bank on the fact that the legislature is going to take care of some of the things that cause us to be in this position with special ed and MSOCs and so on. But we are looking ahead always to say we want to be fiscally, responsible in moving forward. So I think we're in a good position there. And pretty much self-explanatory on slide 29 on how we stay in a fiscally stable.
Chris, can I ask a quick question? As you're talking about projections specifically, that includes what we see as enrollment now lowering over time. That's some part of the increased, or I guess decreased reserve fund. Do we have any idea what's coming from the 1-year-olds to the 3-year-olds?
Well, we projected enrollment for next year, and there's those smaller grades are moving through now. So we are looking at a projection of like 78 less than this current year.
Do we have any way of knowing if kindergarten is going to be bigger next year than it is?
No,
Okay.
we don't. And
I know we've asked that question before. I just couldn't remember.
we've dropped the kindergarten projection in the initial.
Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah, okay. So that's sort of anecdotally, that's sort of that idea. Yeah, okay.
And to take that one step further, one of the most important things that we do is we project well on enrollment and we staff to the projection. And that's one of the key things that gets districts in trouble. We've talked about that before, but we'll definitely be doing that. Yeah. So debt service fund.
All right, so debt service fund, we started the year with $1.7 million in that fund, ended the year with 1.4. And just some key reminders for the debt service fund. We use this solely to service our debt. So we pay our principal and interest on our debt, and that's it. So the money comes in from excess property taxes, and we levy just enough to pay that. So we can't transfer it out. We can't use it for anything else. So that's what stays in there. We do have a requirement to not grow that fund balance. We try and keep it around $1 million to cover our costs, and then any remaining balance when we're on the final year of payment for those debts, we offset the amount levied for taxpayers, so it essentially washes out to zero. Correct. Our outstanding debt as at the end of last year, was 57,255,000, and that is all voted bonds. One pays off in 2036 and the other in 2042.
I just want to, for the student board representatives, are there any questions or comments so far? It's just tons of numbers.
Clear as mud.
One of the big numbers is on this screen right here, which is that the 2022 bonds pay off in 2036. That means that in 12 years, 11 years or so from now, we won't be making payments on the middle school, I think, if that's correct. And it will be up until that point that we start maybe thinking about what else we can do, but it's a while out, I guess I would say.
Okay.
But for me, that's a big page right there.
Yeah, it is. Definitely.
We've talked about it, debt capacity before, so we're just gonna kind of skip over that. We did want to mention tax rates. Looking forward to 2025, we have a projected growth of 5.99%. That's a bit lower than the almost 19 that we saw last year. That'll bring our levy rate up to $1.61 from the $1.55 that it was last year, and our bond rate to $1.23. Overall, that's only a penny increase from last year, which is pretty darn good. So.
Well, and just remember the levy, the amount that was approved we were estimating $1.65 per thousand. So we always look at that when we get our assessed value and make sure that we're under what we promised.
Yep.
Okay, cap projects. You can see there that revenues received 973,607. So that is basically the state match money received as well as interest earnings on the money that's in the bank. And you can see that we basically at the end of the year, we landed with $6.7 million in the ending fund balance. We have included that in the next slide. You can see how it breaks down. So in the bottom in the yellow, you can see that we have leftover state match money in the amount of 878,000. $3.8 million in the private donation for the tech center, and then non-bond other funds of 1.9 million, just under 2 million. We made a little in gray there, a little note to let you know that we did receive the final $750,000 state match payment in November. So with that makes a total of 1.6 million in the unused state match money. And the school board, as if you'll remember, has already approved a resolution a year or so ago to provide for the use of those funds for anything related to safety. So we'll keep it in that designation reserved for safety projects.
All right, and then the last two funds to go over is the Associated Student Body Fund. This is that fund that the students use specifically for student activities. So their fundraising, their activities that they do outside the school day or sometimes inside the school day. They have an ending fund balance there of 440,000. We try and have them spend the money as the students work through the system. So the goal there is to not grow that fund balance as well. Transportation Vehicle Fund, that's the fund that we use to replace our transportation fleet, our buses. We receive depreciation funding from the state for our aging buses as they, I think the max is 18 years. As they get older, we get funding from the state to replace them eventually, once they are off the depreciation schedule. So in that fund, we had $490,000 at the end of the year.
What's the typical depreciation term for a bus?
Between 15 and 18 years.
13 and 18, yep. Okay, final slide here before questions is just things to keep in mind that are coming up. We are bargaining this next spring with all of our groups except for teachers. So all of our classified groups and our administrative group will be bargaining with. Legislative session, reminder that it is a long session, 105-day session, and it starts first part of January. And then also we all know new administration. So we're just kind of we all are keeping a very close eye on any reports around Department of Ed or federal program impacts, because there is word out there that we could lose some federal funding. So we're keeping an eye on that. Also, just reminding the board, our next levy proposal will go before voters in February of 2026. So we have another year left on our levy before we have to go back out to voters. All right, with that, questions. Sorry to rush through it, but we wanted to leave plenty of time for questions.
The only question I had as I went through this earlier is, we were projecting a $2.2 million deficit this last year. We ended up with a surplus. As you projected over the next few years, you continue to project a deficit. Are we going to end up with a surplus at the end of each year in your estimation? And can we continue to make the same types of cuts without actually impacting the classroom?
Well, that's to make reductions with the least amount of impact to the classroom has been our key priority in making reductions. But to answer your question about, do we think we're going to be in the black every year? It's all, every year's different. Different things come up. We're trying to reevaluate, like this time with the ending up in the black when we projected a deficit. I mean, we're really looking at that. How did that happen? What didn't we spend that we thought we were going to spend? What additional money did we get that we didn't think we're going to get? And so on and so forth, and then making adjustments moving forward. So this year in particular, we're looking at that. I mean, we're looking at what we've budgeted in capacity. We're looking at needs in the district, things that we've put off because we don't want to end up spending if we don't need to spend, but there's certain things that we need to take care of with our technology needs and other things that we now are going back and identifying what those are and agreeing to say, okay, we're going to take care of this. These chairs being one thing. No, that's pretty small potatoes, but no, we're having those conversations. So I don't think we're going to end up in the black every year. We don't know what the legislature is going to do. So that's another obviously key factor. If they come back with additional MSOC money, they may front load us with a bunch more MSOC money, and then it's going to have to last us over the course of the year. That doesn't actually help us when we're trying to be diligent about budgeting and knowing where our finances are and knowing what we need to spend over the next year or two. But I know I didn't clearly answer the question, but I think obviously it is dependent upon what happens in a lot of different ways, including the legislature. But we need to every year take a fresh look and say, okay, what can we do? And we're going to continue to prioritize with the least amount of impact to classroom.
And I think to be more specific, a lot of those savings came from attrition, so staff leaving and not replacing those positions. If we continue to take that route, or can we continue to take that route, I guess is my question.
Yeah, I think we've done that. We've used that approach for years. We always, any reductions we need to make, even with enrollment projections, we always look at attrition. We've never had to, knock on wood, we've never had to implement a RIF in any given year. So we will continue to do that. We will continue to reduce staff through attrition based on enrollment projections. Last year, what we did is we went below the baseline. We cut below our baseline. We went further than that. And so we reduced additional positions because of the, what we were forecasting. I'm not sure we're going to end up there when we're building for 25, 26. We're definitely going to make reductions for the enrollment projections, the way they come out in 25, 26. But we've made some pretty significant moves with the shift in how we fund things out of the levy and what gets funded by the buildings. I think we've made some really significant strides with that. That's going to set us up moving forward. And I don't think the reductions are going to need to be as deep. No.
That's what I was saying. That change to what we know is out of our district, there would be invisible. Whether that's in protecting the classroom, as our primary goal, or the other. I think you're really not a lot. But you're doing that as a way to fiscally responsible that.
Yeah. Would agree.
And then I guess, Hunter, your job specifically was affected because you we didn't replace Alicia, or you replaced Alicia and we didn't replace what you were doing. So in your opinion, how was your workload? And I'm assuming some of those responsibilities went to other people in the district. And so I guess, how did that work out as far?
Yeah, that's a good question. So my workload, I'm still figuring out the role, like learning the role, not figuring it out. There has been more responsibility spread out amongst the three directors within TNL. So I don't know if I have a clear answer on that. I feel like it's manageable. I think we're not able to do as much as being all the buildings as we were in the past. Also, that might have been atypical. I think we had a lot of support for our buildings, getting some district-wide systems off the ground, like PLCs. So I think it was needed at that time. It was really nice to have. I think time will tell to see if we start to see turnover within our department. You don't typically see that in district office positions. That might be a tell to say, hey, we might be overburdened, but I wouldn't say that's the case right now. I think the team I work with, they're awesome. They're amazing what they do. Other than the usual normal gripes and concerns around any job. And maybe they're not being honest with me because I'm now their direct supervisor, but I think time will tell on that to see. Yeah.
I want you to remember a couple things, and I shared this last time. As a takeaway from all these slides, all these numbers, everything that you've heard, there's three things that I think are important, and that's obviously how we finished the 23-24 year compared to where we started. If you remember all the way back, is that the initial time a budget was brought to you, you said, nah, time out. We need more time, right? So that's one. The second one is that the fund balance review. And you saw that there's a large amount of money in the fund balance, and is a large percentage of that as well. Now, for you as the board, that gives you some possibilities with regards to those funds. And then on top of that, your capital projects fund. You know that there's funding there to consider improvements to the districts and its capital assets. So with all those things, yeah, we're in a positive position because we have some ability to potentially make some choices for the betterment of the district. I've done a little rearranging on our annual schedule. And that's what we schedule for study sessions and board meetings. And I thought that it probably is an opportune time for us to really take a look at our future with regards to what do we want to try to accomplish with what assets we have available to us with regards to the fund balance and the capital projects fund, and maybe take a look at some opportunities to use those dollars in the best interest of the district in the shorter term than going out to our community and asking them to support a bond issue, because we know that's just not in the cards right now. So with that being said, I've identified the February study session for the specific topic of long and short range planning with regards to capital. So leading up to that, provide a lot more information to set us up to make that time together of benefit for you, but also for the district as we move forward. Okay. Three things. We ended in a good place. Fund balance is in a very healthy place with some availability of dollars to use. And then our capital projects fund, after now the completion of all of the improvements across the district, of where we sit, and again, where we have a donation that's just kind of unheard of to be able to use for the benefit of our students.
I know we don't like to talk about neighboring districts, but Yakima made the paper that they came into this year to have their fund balance. We were at the point. We turned out better. Was that typical? Did never have the follow-up article? Yeah, I did actually use half of their. Did everybody kind of turn out better?
Yeah. Yeah, no, Yakima did use half their fund balance. And other districts ended up dipping into fund balance. But there's few districts in the valley, Wapato, we ended up 11.8 million, they're over 13 million. Other districts like Sunnyside, they're bigger than us, smaller than Yakima, their fund balance is down. It's kind of all over the map. East Valley's financially sound, they're close to where we're at. But there's other districts that definitely are in a different situation, and it all depends on where you're at. You know, Toppenish, they had to cut $8 million, and they're looking at additional cuts. So it's just, everybody has different circumstances with enrollment and funding and.
I was gonna say, a lot depends on the enrollment. A lot of those districts compounded the situation that we're in, but with a decreased enrollment. So they didn't see the numbers come in that they thought.
Well, thank you, Chris and Stephanie, so much for the effort that goes into this, not just obviously for tonight's, but all year round. We really, really appreciate it. Feel very confident in your leadership with our finances as a district. So thank you.
All right, we just have a couple.
One more, I gotta interrupt.
Oh,
You guys don't get, you have you know how good they are. But I don't know if you know how good they are compared to other locations. We are very fortunate to have these two people managing in the resources of a district on a daily basis and then doing all the projection work that they do. Incredible to work with, very open, and then obviously presenting to you the results of a lot of the work that goes on and their commitment. That probably is the biggest thing, their commitment to our school district and to do the best job with the resources that we have. So you're very fortunate,
thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate
as I am too.
it. All right, we have just a couple other quick reports. I will cover the enrollment report. Stephanie will recover the November financial status. Will go to the current month, most current month. But for enrollment, so you can see that our December enrollment was 3617, and these don't include in running start numbers. That's a decrease of 13.5. FTE, which is not uncommon for a semester or trimester break or split before second try. We've also, so now we're 9 under projection. That's not a bad place to be. I think we're gonna land really pretty close to projection again. Remember, what were we last year? 8 under projection. So that was a good spot too. So other than that, you can see across the district that the buildings are running under projection, all of them. And so that is driving, those numbers go into the cohort projection method, and those drive smaller numbers moving forward. So we are looking at a smaller projection for all buildings next year for 25-26, other than the high school. They slightly increase. They have a bigger 8th grade coming in and a small senior class going out. So they're in a little bit better spot. Any questions on the enrollment?
All right, so the financial status update for November, so this last month, we're a quarter of the way through the school year, 25%. We've received almost 15 million in revenue, which is about 22.5% of our budgeted revenue. Lacking a little bit there, like we always do the beginning of the year with those reimbursable grants. Once those start coming in and are approved, then you'll see that kind of match up to where we are in the school year. Expenditures, we've spent about 16.6 million, right on track with 24.7% of our budgeted expenditures, leaving us with 10 million, just over 10 million in our fund balance. Some of the other funds, nothing really special to note, but I will note ASB, you'll see that we bumped up from the 440 fund balance that we ended last year with. We're now at 601. Reason being, at the start of the year, we collect a lot of the fees from students for like ASB cards, yearbooks. So you'll see the revenue jump up and the expenditures will trickle in towards the end of the year. Debt service, we're at 3.1 million. Transportation vehicle fund, we're still at 494,000. And capital projects, we're up to that 7.5 million with that added state match money that came in.
Great. Thank you very much. I think we're moving on now to the superintendent report.
Very short report for you tonight. Just to make you aware, we get back on the study session mode with our monthly meetings. January 9th, we will return to that. Happens to be for that one will be safety. So we'll have Joe come in and share some things that are going on safety wise, short transportation presentation as well. And then probably be a good thing to hear from our student representatives on whatever, if it's safety, if it's their perception of what's going on in the schools. I think that we can pose some questions and encourage them to maybe reach out to their peers and get some feedback. Okay. With that, I think that most all of you know that our school district is going to take a holiday break, starting with an early release day on the 20th, a week from tomorrow. And then we will bring everybody back on the 6th of January. So pretty lengthy time there. Other than that, I wish you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And thank you for everything you do as school board members.
Thank you, Kevin. It's now time for board communications. Is there anyone on the board that would like to bring anything up? I got a chance to go to the middle school and high school choral or choir performance the other night. A great crowd there, a lot of nice parent involvement there, and of course, the music teachers earn their money for sure, and they did a terrific job. I counted 45 students in the middle school choir and 25 students in the high school choir, so really good numbers. It just kind of, I don't know, makes you feel proud of what we're doing as a school district to see so many different ways for kids to find a home in the school and to feel a part of a community. That was really a special evening. There, I think we probably missed the one tonight, if I'm.
Additional Polar Express activities that include not only our intermediate school, but bring in all of our elementary grade levels. That started 5:30, Hunter? Yeah, so probably going to miss most of that. I do think there's another concert tonight at the middle school. So you may be able to catch some of that. High school has a concert next week, athletic activities all over the place. So yeah,
Excellent.
plenty of things to do.
Fun to go to those things. And I'll again end by encouraging us to enter the schools and make visits as frequently as we're able to as board members. Thank you to the student reps for coming tonight. Thank you especially to Hunter and Stephanie and Chris for your reports this evening. And thank you for Mr. Pedroza coming and speaking about a very important issue for all of us. Anything else?
Just with Mr. Pedraza, I think I know that family fairly well from my previous experiences, and he and I are going to have a call early next week.
Great. Thank you for following up with that, Kevin. With that, I believe we can adjourn the meeting.